The financial community once praised Charles Ponzi, the guy in charge of one of the most profitable ventures in American history, for his brilliance. With millions of dollars at his disposal, he was practically being begged to accept money from large crowds of people. Nobody realized that Ponzi's company was based entirely on falsehoods. The entire situation was an absurd fraud that devastated the lives of thousands of innocent people while making Ponzi a very wealthy man. 100 years later, the Ponzi scheme still bears his name since Ponzi's fraud was so stunning and notorious. Let's talk about the notorious man Ponzi and how he fooled the entire world. Charles Ponzi was born on March 3, 1882, in Italy. In general, his family enjoyed financial security due to the diligent nature of his father as a postman. Why was it not possible for him to be born wealthy and lead a carefree life free from financial or employment concerns? Ponzi wanted to act as though he was just like his wealthy pals and had an infinite supply of money. But one day, everything fell apart around him. At last, the money from his inheritance was gone. Additionally, he had no prospect of graduating because he had given his studies zero attention. When his uncle offered him a position as a clerk, Ponzi rejected the idea of doing a 9-to-5 job because he thought he was too intelligent for manual labor. He believed that going to America to try his luck at becoming wealthy was his only remaining option. Ponzi came to Boston on the SS Vancouver in 1903. For young Ponzi, America turned out to be a much-needed reality check. There were no longer any inherited funds or family members available to help him get out of difficulty. Despite how disgusting he considered physical labor, he was forced to work if he wanted to feed. Later, he was hired as a clerk at Banco Zarossi, a bank that catered primarily to Italian immigrants. Unfortunately, Ponzi's new employer turned out to be a scammer, so his employment there did not last long. The long-standing scam known as robbing Peter to pay Paul was being used by Zarossi. Put otherwise, he was financing his older clients with the money from his newer ones. Because of this, Zarossi was able to offer interest rates on all deposits of 6%, which was double the normal rate. However, his clients began to lose faith in him when their relatives in their home country began to voice concerns about not receiving the money the bank was meant to transfer. When the police started looking into the bank for embezzlement in the middle of 1908, Zarossi packed as much cash as he could fit in a suitcase and escaped to Mexico. Ponzi planned to return to the United States in order to avoid being held accountable for his actions and to avoid being embroiled in the aftermath of Zarossi's swindle, but not before he made a pretty dumb mistake. He decided to give himself a small going-away present by forging a check from the Canadian Warehousing Company, a shipping company that was one of his bank's clients, so that he wouldn't have to start over from scratch. From the manager's checkbook, Ponzi took a blank check and filled it out for $423.58. After 2 years on parole, Ponzi made arrangements to return to the United States, but this time, he wasn't going alone. Instead, because he had been paid to smuggle these individuals into America, he brought 5 Italian immigrants with him who had just stepped off the boat without the necessary documentation. Ponzi believed that since he was now free once more, this would provide him with a tidy little paycheck. But he was discovered, and he was taken into custody once more. However, Ponzi anticipated that the judge would be lenient and only impose a minor sentence on him if he entered a guilty plea. Ponzi's heart, however, fell when the judge slammed his gavel and delivered the verdict. He was sentenced to 2 more years in an Atlanta federal prison. Ponzi didn't know what to do after getting let out of jail a second time. While incarcerated, he had devised numerous schemes to amass wealth, but each one required cash, and Ponzi had none. A number of years prior, Ponzi had become familiar with the idea of arbitrage. He used the Ponzi scheme, which is the practice of purchasing and reselling an asset in 2 separate marketplaces in an attempt to profit from the price differential. Regarding IRCs, the exchange value was consistently the same regardless of the country. However, the purchase price varied significantly based on variations in the local currency. Since ancient times, arbitrage has been a wise financial strategy. Ponzi established the Securities Exchange Company in January 1920 to manage what appeared to be his most successful economic endeavor to date. Regretfully, Ponzi's aspirations and dreams were dashed by reality, just like it had done countless times before. The truth was that the profits from the arbitrage of IRCs were so small that they would be completely wiped out by the costs of shipping the IRCs from one country to another. The sort of operation Ponzi was envisioning could not be sustained since there were simply too few IRCs in the world. And yet, he would not give up on this notion. Ponzi was certain that this was his lucky break, his one-way ticket to the lavish life he had always believed he deserved. Therefore, he transformed his concept into the notorious Ponzi scheme that bears his name. Ultimately, his idea to trade IRCs for profit seemed quite appealing. Now, at its core, the Ponzi scheme is similar to the classic fraud robbing Peter to pay Paul, which Ponzi saw firsthand when he was working for Banco Zarossi. It involves getting people to invest in a business opportunity by promising them huge returns in a short amount of time, with little to no risk. Their money is never actually invested, though. Rather, the scammer keeps the majority of the money for themselves while distributing a portion of the earnings to previous investors. The majority of these early investors decide to reinvest their gains in the company after realizing such substantial returns, believing that everything is going according to plan. Since they think the revenues are quite legal, many of them even inform others about the opportunity. In actuality, though, all that's occurring is that some of the funds from new investors are being used to pay the earlier investors. But as Ponzi enjoyed a meteoric rise in wealth and fame, suspicion over his dealings soon followed. One of the reporters of the Boston Post, Clarence Barron, found that calculated that covering the volume of investments made through Ponzi's scheme would have required around 160 million coupons to have been traded, and yet only 27,000 coupons were in circulation. Regulators raided Ponzi's office the next month. He had a total of $61 worth of postal coupons in his possession, according to an audit of his company. After turning himself in, Ponzi faced mail fraud charges from the federal government. In addition to serving 9 years in prison for state offenses, he completed 3.5 years in prison. He spent the rest of his life in poverty after being deported to Italy after serving his entire term. In 1949, he passed away in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. What do you think of Charles Ponzi's grand plan of deceit? Tell us in the comments. That's all for now. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video and found it informative, then don't forget to hit that like button below. And if you want to stay updated with more great content like this, make sure to subscribe to our channel by clicking the red button and just ringing the notification bell so you never miss any future content from us. Your support means the world.